of $2,000,006. However, in the final computation, we leave interest out of the resulting savings. In this case, there'd be a total savings, combined savings of $400,000. Half of that would be the state share on a CTFP project, which would be $200,000 due to the state. Authority EC 17070.43B states interest on all funds deposited in the
Thank
county.
you. Steve,
Fund shall
Steve,
be
that's okay.
retained in that fund.
We got that. So, as you can see, this is, which I want to thank both Steve Inman, Michael Watanabe, Juan, and OPSC staff. We've had this discussion for the last 7 months, 8 months, probably even continued. But I really appreciate the collaboration and coming to work together and seeing that there is an ambiguity in the statute. We don't have authority in the regulations to, for example, financial hardship says savings and interest. For CTE, it says you shall not retain savings. And unfortunately, through an oversight, which will probably be fixed in the next CTE program, as other changes with CTE, it's kind of a why go there? The program is almost done, release the third cycle. It's acknowledging that OPSC was probably right figuratively, but statute and code did not support how they were going to use or collect the interest. So I think this is a good and reasonable compromise that we do know savings is cannot be retained in CTE, and that as like with new construction and modernization, interest will go into Fund 35, and you just have to show that it's being used on other high priority capital projects. So I want to kind of have this discussion, and then we'll next look at the letter that goes out, and we can have that discussion. So if there are any concerns, questions, comments on this part, I will open it up. Yeah, Mary?
On the first page, under staff comments, the third paragraph, the sentence reads that the school district must be able to provide supporting documentation during an audit that the interest was expended on high priority capital facility needs. So what if they haven't spent it yet?
That's fine. You'll be able to show us a fund balance that the amount's still sitting
That
there.
it's still there and
Sure.
extant in the account, and there won't be a problem.
And then, when we come back to audit you a year or two later, we'll ask the question again. Yeah, we'll just follow up.
Any other questions? Do we have, for the members sitting here today, do we have consensus on this report? I take silence as a yes. So if you fail to object, you lose. But I'd like to report out that there's at least on the IMP committee, before I open it up to public comment, that the IMP committee has consensus on this direction. Consensus on this direction. Great. So let's open it up to public comment. Any public comment? Come on up to the mic.
Good morning.
Good morning, Richard.
How are you today? I agree with
Your name?
Richard Gonzalez and Associates. Thank you. I totally agree with what was written up in the report. However, the chart doesn't reflect that. The chart reflects that the interest is also part of the savings, and therefore, when you take the $3,010,000,
version.
I have the old version.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there was a new version.
This should be 260.
Okay, so that should be expenditures is only 2.6
Yeah.
or 2.6. Okay, then that would match it out.
Sorry, that was a late delay.
Okay.
Yesterday, I think.
Michael, can you just explain for those who maybe only saw the old chart and didn't see the new chart, what the old chart was and what the change is?
Sure. On the old version, we had a state share and district share at $1.5 million each, interest at $10,000, expenditures 2,610,000 and savings being at 400,000. Copy paste there. When what it should have showed, and the revision online as of this morning will show the same state district shares and interest, but expenditures we changed it to 2,600,000, and we also showed the math: 1.5 million plus 1.5 million, subtracted 2,600,000 equaling 400,000.
Okay, that's consistent, thank you. I also had one other question for you, and I think it follows along with what Mary was asking you. Is, okay, so we have a project that has some savings, let's just say the interest for right now. The district says that they've spent it on their other project, be it another high priority, non-SAP funded project. Are you going to be satisfied with showing of a warrant that the money was expended on that account, or are you going to do additional audits beyond that?
On the savings amount or the interest?
Whatever the savings or interest, whatever is the amount that is being retained by the district.
It's the interest only.
Interest only.
Interest only, because there can be no savings with CTE. So
So we're talking about the interest. In this example you gave us is $10,000. Okay, so I end up, for argument's sake, finding out that my roof is really bad. So I spend my $10,000 along with additional money on the roof repair of one of my schools. Okay, if I show you the warrant that shows that the expenditure was made, is that going to be sufficient, or are you going to go beyond that in the audit?
You don't even actually need to report it to us until we look at your interest sitting in the account. So you wouldn't even provide a warrant or invoice for that 10,000 in interest at this point.
Yeah, but what?
But
when is
if we were to audit interest later on, what we'll probably go back to is your accounting records. We'll look at your general ledger to see the amounts being paid out. We won't actually need copies of all the warrants and invoices to show that,
Okay, so
unless we have an issue.
we're talking about the final audit.
Yeah.
Journal entry
Yeah.
or something for that in the accounting?
Yes,
Is this-
and that'd be sufficient.
Yes.
Well, yeah, a journal entry.
Okay.
thank you. Letty? And then Mamie?
Sometimes when there's interest sitting in Fund 35, it keeps making interest. You're booking this interest amount at the point where you close the CTE project. People have trouble closing that fund out, or actually getting all the money used out of it, because it keeps generating interest while you're waiting to use the interest, kind of thing, and there's always remainder amounts. So those remainder amounts, interest on the interest, so to speak, are the districts to assign, correct?
Yeah, we're not.
You don't
we're not-
recalc the
We're not
interest
going to keep
ongoing.
going over. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mamie?
I actually, mine is related to Letty's comment, and it's a technical question. We would not report the expenditure of that interest then on an expenditure worksheet related to the CTE project.
Correct.
Okay. Now, this is slight birdwalk, Lisa, but, and I don't want it to open up a big discussion, but just looking at the technical way in which we, like Letty said, you book interest and you book interest and you keep doing things and it keeps earning. Is there a point in time when OPSC might have already considered or consider where we don't keep putting interest related to the project, but we just do interest related to the fund, and then we just report the expenditure of that interest so that it's not tracked with the project anymore, just because of this ongoing issue of it earns, and you never can quite close it out?
Internally, we've only just started having those discussions, so no resolution on how far to go on that or continuous tracking yet.
Okay. Then we'll look forward to that as maybe a
Yeah, we
future
really
fun discussion item.
Applaud that effort, because it's just it's not significant enough dollars that everybody's yelled about it, but it's a pain for everybody.
So I think, it may not necessarily be a full-on IMP discussion, or if OPSC comes up with a process, maybe outreach to Letty and Mamie, get a little feedback, and if there's kind of an agreement, then maybe a building blocks type thing, because it is a technical, more so policy thing. Is that okay, Juan? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yay. So now we get to any other, sorry, I assume no other further public comment? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we're moving on. with the letter. So last time when we were discussing CTE, we kind of wanted to see what the letter is that goes out to districts. This is the letter. So any comment, feedback, questions? Yes, Mamie.
Going to the middle paragraph and where you've got the underscored additional language, where it says, the final determination of any amount to be returned to the state, if necessary, would it be more appropriate to say, if any? And that somewhere in there it needs to be worked in that it's based, the $100,000 in savings based on project expenditures. It's a little nitpicking, but it does help make it a little more clear if you're the recipient of it and you're not fully understanding the big context.
Yeah, Rob?
And I shared those concerns. It just, I think it may be a little misleading to some districts because it's alluding to a savings that very well may not happen. It's you're basing it on an estimate even prior to bid. So I just think it's premature to even get into that conversation. I think it's nice to tell them, hey, by the way, the program has no savings component, and any savings on the project has to be returned.
That says it all.
Yeah. But in terms of the DSA needing a new estimate at DSA approval, it kind of dovetails, I know, with the staff report and this letter. If you're not asking for any money to be returned at to OPSC at that time, I guess I'm just at a loss as to why we even need the estimate now at DSA approval if we've left the whole notion of returning money at that point in time. Does that make sense? We talked about earlier in this conversation in the infancy that the district would be returning money at that stage, and we were concerned that that would just lead to projects being underfunded because they haven't been bid yet. So we've now left that, which is great. So
what you're saying, Rob, is that you get the preliminary, the reservation, when the plans are actually submitted, why do another review, or why at that point?
it's just redundant for both parties.
Well, I mean, we still need to have that. We need to have the final plans. That's a requirement. And then the.
So would you just be using the DSA tracker then as the estimate, or are you expecting the district to produce a full-scale cost estimate? And I apologize for my ignorance.
That's what we currently do. Yeah, we have a revised cost estimate that we review, that's submitted along with the final DSA and CD approved plans, and we do another review based on the cost estimate is now based on the actual plans, so it's sort of a final review.
But there's no adjustment made to the apportionment at that point in time.
No.
So it
Yeah.
just, it does cost the district money to produce that cost estimate, and in your time to review it, and if there's no action as a result of it, other than maybe this letter, and it's all, at that point, it's complete unknown, so that's all
I think
Understood.
I think that brings up a good policy discussion. It's a little late with the CTE program, but I think it's recognize, set it down. If there is more CTE funding and we're looking at future, how do we streamline? If there is a certain pre-designated amount and it's based off of preliminary plans, do we need a final estimate since it won't change apportionment, because you'll need final plans to be submitted to OPSC, but maybe not a final cost estimate, which will come in at audit, because you're going to have to show project costs and what it's used for. So I think that brings up a bigger issue for us to log into the program if continued. Masha? Look. Okay. I did express some concerns with the sentence, while the OPSC anticipates the return of approximately $100,000 in savings as well. In prior versions, I just thought it potentially does more harm than good, because the sentence above says you can't retain savings. Whatever those savings are, you just can't retain them, and that to lay it out some districts who may not be savvy or may not have a consultant or may not understand, might take that, oh my God, I can't fully expend if something goes, over. So it was my hope if we could take that out, just because it does cause a lot of angst, if possible. Yes, Master.
Are you proposing to take the entire sentence out, or just the part, while the Office of Public School Construction anticipates a return of approximately $100,000 in savings? Remove that and keep the final determination of any amount be returned to the state? And I'm
If
not su-
any.
If any will not be made. So keep the underlined version still.
Yeah.
Keep
yeah,
the underlined text. I'm not sure necessary is the right word, like you said.
If any, yeah, no.
But I think that's a good
Thank you
advice.
for clarifying. I think we get to the gist of what we want to say with the underlined sentence, and just remove the beginning of the sentence, if at all possible. OPSC, Michael, Juan,
Yeah,
does
no,
it
that's-
seem reasonable?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Because I think it gets to where we want to go without, some districts going into a panic. Any other comments from IMP committee members on this? Any public comment? Sweet.
Let's call it a day.
Closing comments that we got through an item. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to OPSC for working together on this one. I appreciate it. It was a lot of hard work. What? Lyle, put your hand down. Are you going to say thank you?
Thank you, but would you just reiterate what you're actually doing? I'm not sure in the result.
Okay, I can do that. So on page 3, Lyle, page 3 of your IMP material, which is the letter, we are going to be, second paragraph, the sentence that starts with while that is underlined, propose to remove that all the way down to where it says savings, delete that sentence, and capitalize the T and start that sentence. So it shall read, the final determination of any amount to be returned to the state, if any, delete, if any, will not be made until an audit of the project, all the way down to there. And then all the other changes have been accepted in the report. There may be minor, non-substantial changes.
Might be good to say the savings amount, since you've taken it off.
Okay. Where?
Any
The
savings?
final
amount?
determination of any savings amount to be returned to the state.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, everyone. We will now be moving on to the LCP. Again, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Michael. Where is she? Oh, my glasses on. Oh, she's in the back. I see. Good morning.
Good morning.
Anytime you're ready, Brian. What?
Okay, I'm Brian Odell, OPSC.
Laurel Winter, OPSC.
We're here to discuss the labor compliance program. Last year, Senate Bill X29 was signed into law. It required the Department of Industrial Relations to enforce a labor compliance program for all public works projects that receive state bond funds. This obviously impacts the school facility program. DIR would be implementing the enforcement themselves, and then charging a fee to the awarding body. The law or the new program doesn't become effective until the DIR regulations become effective to implement the program, which will occur on August 1st, 2010. So what we're here to talk about is to present a draft SFP regulations that will implement the program for the school facilities program and any other programs that will have impact to that would receive bond funds. So it wouldn't impact the emergency repair program, joint use. No, it would impact joint use, but not deferred maintenance because those come from a separate pot of money. Joint use, new construction, modernization, all of those. The fee will be 1/4% of the state share of the total project costs. Similar to the previous labor compliance program calculation, we would exclude site acquisition costs when we calculate that. So just trying to capture the construction costs. There's two basic triggers for this to happen, for the projects to be subject to the fee. One is the contract award date occurs after, excuse me, after August 1st, 2010, when the regulations are in effect. And the second is that the awarding body or the school district receives state bond funds, which doesn't occur until the 5005 stage. So we calculate the fee when the application is submitted, but it's not actually due until the 5005. And the school district receives the state funds. If you look on IMP page 06, there's a walkthrough of how ideally it would work. School district has a project. They award a contract after August 1st, so they know that it's going to be triggered. They would alert DIR per their regulations that this contract has been awarded. Nothing is due yet. The district proceeds, designs the project, goes through CDE, DSA, submits the 5004 application to OPSC. It gets approved. At that time, OPSC will calculate what the fee will be, and then there's an apportionment amount for the state share of that. And the district then goes out, submits the 5005, construction contracts have been signed, and then the fee then becomes due. To help facilitate the process, there's already a Form 521 award letter that OPSC sends out to indicate that the 5005 has been processed and is going over to the State Controller's Office. So the idea was to put just a reminder on that letter saying this is what the DIR fee is, and then we would CC the Department of Industrial Relations on that form as well. If you look on page 07, we have a summary of the changes to make. On the SAB 5004, which pretty much the other forms are cut and paste of this. This is the basic template that we tried to use because it's the same rules and same calculation for all of the other programs. We're trying to align the DIR fee with the apportionment amount or the state share. So the underlined portion there in number 17 would be the instructions, and it would just say previously if it's subject to Labor Code Section 1771.7, which is the old Labor Code, the old Labor Compliance Program, or is subject to a DIR fee to enforce the Labor Compliance Program pursuant to Labor Code Section 1771.75A. So just that would be the trigger that this fee has to be calculated. And then we would require the date the governing school board awarded the construction contract, because that's what DIR is using for the trigger. We know there can be multiple contracts, but when was it awarded by the school district? That's their trigger, so we wanted to align our trigger with them. A little further down, this refers to page 7 of the 5004. So this is the actual form that we fill out. It asks a question, will you be required to initiate and enforce the labor compliance program pursuant to 1771.7? And then we'll have a B, which is, will you be required to pay this DIR fee pursuant to 1771.75A of the labor code for the project? So again, trying to follow the existing model. And then we ask for the contract award date. And that's, again, different than what we used to do, where we asked for the date the contract was signed, which I think meant ink date. Is that what we used to do, I think? So this is contract award date. So a little different, but again, that's what the criteria DIR will be using. And then on page 9 of the 5004, so just the next paragraph, we just added at the bottom, this is part of the certification, that if the project is funded, the old program, basically, we tried to grandfather it in by saying that if the project receives Prop 47 or 55 funds, and then the last trigger, it had to have been awarded before August 1st, 2010, because that would be the trigger that it falls under the old program. The second paragraph there, the last paragraph on that page, the district will pay a fee, it should say a district will pay the DIR fee for labor compliance program pursuant to Labor Code Section 1771.75 if the construction contract is awarded after August 1st, 2010, and the district has not obtained a waiver for the fee pursuant to Education Code Section 17250.30, and then the certifications continue on. So obviously, if a district has obtained a waiver from DIR, they don't need to certify they're going to pay it. That was the idea. All right, and lastly, again, the other changes are basically cookie cutter from this. They follow the same triggers. But if we turn to page 9, there it shows the amendments to the regulation section 1859.71.4, which is new construction. Now it again tries to specify, is this project subject to the old previous labor compliance program funding? So it says any project awarded, and that needs to be changed. It needs to say construction contract awarded prior to August 1st, 2010, that is funded in whole or in part by Proposition 47 or Proposition 55 that initiated or enforced a labor compliance program. So these would be projects that believe that they were going to receive 47 or 55 funds, complied with the law. So we want to specify that. We know there's some, because of on August 4th, there's going to be some trying to figure out exactly which projects need to be funded from which bucket. So that's trying to align with that. Then if we drop down to paragraph C on the same page, any project awarded on or after August 1st, 2010, so these would be the new fee, the new labor compliance program, after determining all other funding authorized by these regulations, the board shall increase the state share by 1/4 of 1% of the total project cost, less the district matching share required in section 1859.77.1 and exclusive of site acquisition costs for any project for which the school district is required under Labor Code Section 1771.75 to pay the Department of Industrial Regulations, that needs to be corrected, or no relations, I'm sorry, fee to initiate and enforce a labor compliance program. So we have this fee that's 1/4 of 1%, and basically, so if the new construction, it's 50-50. For the modernization regulations, it's 60-40. So whatever the state share is, first determine the fee, then just divide up the state and district share, and then that's the grant that'll be awarded. All right, I think that covers it. Everything else is just a cookie cutter or based on those basic changes. Thank you.
And then, Brian, do we have a representative potentially from DIR that can come up that might be able to answer questions or at least write down the questions and be able to get back to some of our members?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, here in the audience.
But does she want to come up?
Up to her.
I'll start with what I consider the easy questions. Is
Okay.
this on?
Yep.
My name is Nancy Steffen. I'm the project manager for the new compliance monitoring unit within the Department of Industrial Relations.
Welcome, Nancy. Thank you so much for coming. And honestly, if you don't have an answer,
I won't answer.
appreciate just, following back up so that we can help have a good, I guess, concise communication plan with our districts so that we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sean.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. The first one is related to multiple contracts and how we should calculate the grant and the fee
if some of our contracts are before August 1st and the rest of the contracts are after August 1st. And this isn't a case where there's only one SFP application, but multiple contracts in that application.
Quick question, that just to make sure I understand the scenario. Would that be a case where there's one contract award for the project and the multiple, like, subcontracts, or would there be multiple prime contracts that are awarded that would go under the same 5004?
It's both. So like, on our new construction projects, we'll see, it's one project, one set of DSA drawings, but we'll have more than one contract. Maybe we do a main part and a phase two. For our mod projects, we tend to pick up multiple projects, multiple DSA numbers, all that kind of stuff, put them together before we file it with OPSC. So they were all done at different times. They're really not related, other than that they're at the same site. So we have both things going on.
In the case of, correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, in the case of there being a prime contract and then subcontracts beyond that, Department of Industrial Relations is using the prime contract, so we would follow that as well. In the case of multiple prime contracts, I didn't prepare it with that in mind. I'll have to figure out how to address that. Couple different things to do, but I don't have an answer this morning. Sorry.
We do welcome suggestions at this point to try and help us, so.
I can tell you what we've been doing with
Yeah,
OPSC. Usually we identify a main contract. So on new construction, there's usually a bigger one based on value that becomes the main. On mods, it's a little bit harder, but we tend to go with largest value or latest contract or earliest contract, depending on the situation. It works with us in OPSC because it doesn't affect the grant or any of our processing. I just don't know how that connects with DIR now that there's a third player in it.
Well, when we're looking at jurisdiction for this oversight, we're going to look at when the school board awarded the contract. If they award multiple contracts for the project, I've seen phases where there's a phase one to do certain work, and then they award another contract for phase two, and so on and so forth. When that happens, each one of those initial awards to the prime contractor to do the job, that's what's going to trigger the fee. The subcontracts between the prime contractor and their various sub-trades is not affected by the fee. That's going to be part of the entire project cost. Go ahead. Did that, that didn't answer it?
I think that probably handles most of our new construction. I'll give an example of new. We had a new school. We did all the building construction under one contract, and then we had a completely separate contract for part of the paving for the parking lot, and it came later. So I assume in that case we would use the first contract as the one that controls, but I don't know. If the first contract happened before August 1st and the second contract occurs after, you might want your fee.
Well, if the contract was awarded prior to August 1st, we will not be looking at those projects. Our authority doesn't take effect until after August 1st. So if the board awarded a contract for the parking lot repaving, that's the project, part of the project that we would be monitoring, and that's the part of the project that we would be expecting the fee to be paid.
That clears it up for me in terms of what DIR will assess. Now, how is OPSC going to handle that in terms of calculating the grant?
Well, the intent was to try to align the grant with the DIR fee, and we'll have to think about that a little bit. Try to do it in the easiest way, because it could get real messy if we tried to come up with the big schematic of every contract for every project and how to verify it and all that. So we'll work on it.
So again, I think I hear suggestions would be welcome on those issues. Rob? Yep.
Not to try to answer it for you, but just to make sure I understand it right, maybe for the audience, the new law behooves the district to tell the DIR after August 1st that, hey, I have a project that I'm starting that requires this program. The DIR then is going to start doing what it needs to do as a result of that notification, but won't get funded until we submit our 5004 followed by our 5005. So we're going to notify you as soon as we award a contract. You're going to start enforcing the program even without the money
That's correct.
until we apply for the state funding.
That's correct. The
So whether
fee-
it's one
the fee is
contract or
triggered-
25, we're going to tell you and you're going to do what you need to do.
Right. That is correct.
Yeah, that was actually, unfortunately, if you look in the final statement of reasons from DIR, there was kind of, I guess, kind of a legislative glick into that. The trigger of the notification wasn't until funding,
Right.
which means, in projects that could already be built, it gets trigger funding and DIR goes out there and goes, oh, it's built.
Right.
And then what does that mean with the fee that districts owe? And so just to make sure that it's clear, because we're going to really have to communicate this to districts, because if you read the final statement of reasons, it says, well, we can do nothing about it. You need a legislative fix. But what DAR is suggesting is that at the school board level award of contracts, districts to get a hold of DIR so that DIR can start the oversight, and it's not going to be, while understanding they won't get paid the fee until funding is actually allocated from the state allocation board.
That's correct. Right now, awarding agencies, school districts, are required to notify the Division of Apprenticeship Standards when they award a project that could use apprentices on it. What we've done is modified that form, and we will be getting that information from our sister agency, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. So it's not going to be another notice that a school district would have to file with us, but that's what's going to trigger the new compliance monitoring unit, CMU, to contact the school district and say, we've got this notice from Apprenticeship Standards that says you're starting this project, and is any of the funds going to come from one of the construction bonds? And the whole idea is, for us, we're a law enforcement agency. We're trying to make sure that these projects are completed in compliance with state law. So we need to start at the beginning to make sure that as the project progresses, that the contractors are meeting their statutory obligation to pay the appropriate rates, et cetera. So.
And based on that, because I know I had expressed that concern to Brian and Juan at OPSC of, how do we make this program work when there's a glitch, after the fact, and that wasn't the intent of the legislation. And the fact that you guys have kind of figured out a way, I want to congratulate and thank you, because I feel an air of collaboration that might be working to get things done. So that was a big issue I know that I had that was going to, cause somewhat angst in school districts and how we work things. So is anybody else have any questions? Yep. All right, we'll go Letty, Deborah, Rob, do you have another one? And Rob.
I have another one.
Okay.
Okay, so we have an award. At the point of award, we fill out the form, we send the form in, and that puts DIR on notice that we're active, okay? And so the CMU monitors that project. And then typically after that, we put our 5005 in to get funding. Will that funding then come in our grant and we forward it to you? Or does that funding, is it determined and then it goes to you? So it's coming to us in our grant, right? So then we pay it to them as each project is awarded. Or if we've already awarded them, when we get our money, then we send a check to you each time, or for everything we've already, let me start again. So, okay, let's say I have a leaseback. I will have a series of contracts. Or if I have a multi-prime, I have a series of contracts. Some of them will have been issued when I do my 5005. Some of them probably will not have been. So when I get funded by the state, I'll issue a check to DIR for the fee on projects that have already been awarded, or contracts that have already been awarded. And then as I issue subsequent contracts, awards, there'll be more fees coming. Now, this will be all under one project. Okay, is that, am I tracking that right?
Yes.
Okay, so then we get to the end of the project, and we're adding up all the numbers, and the fee wasn't calculated exactly correct. So is that percentage going to be adjusted at audit, or is it static based on what we submitted at the time of the 05?
It would be static because we would determine the funding amount, and then the way it's going to be audited, as was explained to me, is it would be just the main group. So it's not audited separately, such as site acquisition costs can be audited separately. This DIR fee would be thrown into the mix in all expenditures.
Yeah, part of the disconnect for me is that the fee is calculated on project dollars, but due to you on construction awards. And construction is only averages like 70% of the overall project cost. So there is a difference on the two methodologies. How do I get it to you based on project when I'm sending it to you based on awards? Awards are never going to add up to project.
Yeah, the fee is 1/4% of the bond proceeds that you will be receiving for your project. The fee is also calculated when you use design-build procurement process. Then it is 1/4% of the total project cost. So there's really two methods for the fee to be determined. So we would be looking at getting 1/4% of construction bond funds when they are released, I think that's the right term, to the school district. Up until that time, we will be still monitoring the project to ensure compliance with state law. And at some point, the fee will come in. I've explained this before to some of the OPSC people. This is sort of based on an insurance model. People are paying money in to support the program, and then we'll be carrying it forward as the money comes in to fund the program.
So my explanation was not correct. So at the point I get funded by the state, I calculate the fee based on my entire project, not the construction portion. The state share of my entire project award, and that full check goes to you no matter whether I've contracted for all the services or not. See, when we say project, we don't mean construction contract. Project is the whole thing.
Right.
Construction contract is an element of it. We have a lot of contracts that aren't construction.
Right. We're looking at public works construction projects. So if it falls within the definition of what a public works is, which is building, alteration, et cetera,
But with
that's what we're looking at.
Sorry, but this is
No,
an
keep going.
important
No, this is
definition.
important.
Yeah.
No, there's.
So on my public works project, I have about 30% soft costs, about 70% hard costs at the end of the day. Sometimes we do better than that, but, that's a norm. This fee is based on the 100% or on the 70? The hard. Which one are we talking when we're talking project?
Okay.
In actuality, Letty, it's based on bond. It's based on the money it's given to
So
you.
it doesn't have to do with the construction contract. You're monitoring the construction contract, but we're paying the fee based on the award, the bond funds.
So
right?
understand eligibility-wise, you may have a $20 million construction project, but you only qualify for $5 million in state funding. It'll come off the $5 million in state funding.
Okay.
That's correct.
So let me
Except in design build, if you use a design build procurement process, then it's based on the total project cost, which would include all of your soft costs minus site acquisition. So there's two ways that the fees are determined.
Okay.
And I'm told that school districts don't use design build very frequently, but in those cases, the fee
Yeah,
would be calculated differently.
Some districts love it.
But in general, we're looking at the bond fees bond proceeds that the school district would be receiving, that's what the fee is based on, state construction bond.
So if I may just restate it concisely. So I submit my 5005 to, for award. When I get my fund release, this fee is calculated on the state share of the fund release, the state fund release, and we would at that point owe DIR a check from the fund release. It comes to the district and the district pays DIR.
That is right now how it is.
That's what we're thinking.
And yes, DIR hopes to work with the state allocation board to take that responsibility out of the district's hands and have the money come directly from the bond proceeds without you having to send us a check, et cetera. And the reason for that is because we're trying to not get into chasing money down and sending invoices to school districts that have to process a process invoice and all of that stuff.
And it is hard for us to get a warrant without an invoice, frankly.
And that will, of course, be the subject of discussion that will need board direction. But currently, until there's board direction, districts will be responsible. And if there's some way where we can help in creating an invoice or something to that extent when we release bond funds, of just saying this is the apportionate amount for your DIR, which I know we're working on a letter.
Yeah, and I know it's other people asking questions, but just really quick, even before that, Letty, I mean, we're going to have it as part of the actual funding shell, the amount that's going to be calculated, the quarter 1%. So you'll have the amount in the summary of total project cost that goes to the board, so the district will know, here's how much we're setting aside for this fee, for this LCP grant. So come fund release, you already know. So when it goes to the board, the funding shell will display all the total project costs, including this new LCP grant or fee.
Just a thought, it might be helpful to districts if that was worded in a letter that will meet the 5-point qualifications of something we can generate a check from. So, if there's a date, an amount, a payee, if you list those, that this now means that you owe to so-and-so an amount of due by, then the districts could actually just generate it from that letter. That might save a step for everybody, just a thought.
Do we have some of that on the other? Sorry.
Yes, we're working on the form, I didn't know what it was called, but the 521, where it indicates that OPSC has processed the 5005 and is now sending the fund released over to State Controller's Office. There's an award letter that goes to the districts, and so our thought was to put something on there that calculates all that. Hopefully, the computers will do all of that, and it can happen easily, so we're working on that too. I don't know if we can get a due date on there, though, because of some of these things we're talking about.
You may just say within,
90 days
90 days
upon
of
receipt of funds, or 60 days or whatever.
That would suffice.
Okay.
Okay, we have Deb, then Rob, then Sean.
Letty, thanks for that clarification. A few questions. So just so I'm sure that the dollar amount will be allocated for the new cost for the LCP. That's in the calculation in the shell, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next question, what if a district uses their own money?
And doesn't receive state bond funds?
Yes.
Then that part of the trigger doesn't happen.
Unless you use a design-build procurement process.
Okay, so that goes to my third question. Why is there such a difference or a distinction, particularly in the dollars, because it's 1/2 of 1% of your bond money, and you're not, and I just want to make sure I'm correct, you're not calculating soft costs in there, correct?
No, bond dollars have nothing to do with what your soft costs are.
Right, and it's 1/4.
1/4, okay. Now, but why do you charge for the entire project on a design build?
Because some of the activities in the construction projects do require monitoring, and the way the statute was written, For the bond money, they made that distinction in the actual statute. So when we adopted our regulations, we also made the distinction. If you go back to the original legislation, it treated bond money different than design, build, procurement processes.
Why?
I can help.
Yep, Cesar, I was going to turn to you.
Well, we had worked with.
And by the
several
way,
different building agencies.
explain how you know this, Cesar, please.
Okay, we were the sponsors of the legislation. We had different pieces of measures that would add the labor compliance program similar to the traditional way they were included before in the bonds. That was, of course, rejected by the governor's office and cited an LAO study because of the expense of labor compliance programs, shifting away from third-party LCPs. So we decided to actually task the agency, which is also already in charge of enforcing labor compliance on public works project, and giving them the resources through this methodology of funding here. Design build in of itself, whether it be school construction, transportation, special districts, that had template language that included labor compliance programs as one of the requirements. So whenever a school district used a design build, they had to follow this template language basically in order to get a bill and permission. So because they had this authority within that, labor compliance programs were already included. So this just was modifying that existing law with this particular new bill.
Has anybody done the calculations on what, I'm just kind of curious what the difference you would be paying for this program in a design build versus the other way? It will be about the same, or are you going to be paying more?
You mean
In a
total-
design build for the labor compliance law?
When you look at the total costs of a project, if it's $20 million and you take 1/4% of the total $20 million, it will be higher than if you're getting $5 million bond, because the fee would be based only on the $5 million construction bond fee. So it definitely would be a higher cost for the fee.
Okay. Deborah, any other questions? Juan, did you have?
The 5004 asks I was thinking if could we have the total project cost amount at that time, knowing that the application is submitted to us typically soon after the plans are approved by DSA and CDE. Would we know that information at that time? And I was just actually asking for feedback if anybody.
Design build, generally you do, but of course there's always change orders. But I think is what you need to do is determine at what point are you going to determine the total project cost. Do you take it at the contract award stage versus the final stage, which the two are never going to be the same. But I think for districts, they need a certain level of certainty. So if there was a policy kind of created with design build, total project cost will be estimated, I guess, at time of submittal of the 5004. And then that's it.
Sorry, I'm just thinking that we'll have to figure that out because we'll have to include that in the actual item that goes before the board. So I'm just thinking out loud.
No, but it's an issue because districts will want certainty if they are going to go that route. So next we have Deborah. Okay? Rob and Sean.
Just a question on the background section on page 4. I'm looking at the last sentence in the second paragraph under background. And it says the DIR may waive the fee for certain school districts that have previously been granted approval by the DIR to initiate and enforce a labor compliance program. Is that, so if a district, actually, can you just clarify that sentence? I don't want to throw any hypotheticals out there.
That's Sean.
It's his sentence, but I'll tell you what I think it means.
All right.
Currently, under current statutes, a public entity and also private third-party entities can apply to operate a labor compliance program. They apply to the director of the Department of Industrial Relations, who reviews the application and the manner in which they're going to conduct their program,
Right.
and either grants approval or denies approval for the program. Any school districts that have current approved programs are entitled to a fee waiver, so that they would not be paying the department the compliance monitoring fee.
And they would be doing it themselves.
They would be doing it themselves, that's correct.
And it's not just LA that has their own program approved. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are some other school districts that also have approved programs. And actually, there's some pending applications right now.
So if I have an approved program, do I have to administer the program, or can I hire a third party to administer that approved program?
You would have to administer the program. There are, Caesar probably could tell you more than me, but the one of the intents was not to have third-party labor compliance programs. So in our regulations, we have limited the use of outside consultants, making the school district, if they have a labor compliance program, responsible for the administration of the program.
District staff, essentially.
That's correct.
Okay.
And there are some school districts that have that. We also will be sending out notices to the school districts who are depending on third-party labor compliance programs to notify them that they have to modify their program, or they could lose approval for their program.
And that's the reason I ask, because I know there's a number of districts who have their own program approved, but hire a third party to administer that program.
Right. They're going to have
Thank
to
you.
make some changes.
Great, thank you.
Sean? That was a good segue.
We didn't plan that.
Yeah, I know. The OPSC write-up suggests that districts that enforce their own LCP wouldn't be entitled to the additional money in the grant. Was that the intent?
No.
Okay, so I think we need to change some of the words, because a lot of them suggest that the fee doesn't apply if you enforce your own, or the grant doesn't get increased if you enforce your own.
Okay, we were trying not to say that, but if there's any places where it does, we'll go back and check.
So just to be very clear, the fee is not due to DIR, but the grant is still received by the district because they have approved their own LCP program, so they're going to incur cost. Correct.
I'm sorry. Is it the old grant or the new?
The new.
Wow,
The new,
okay.
yeah.
I
So it
meant
would
to
be the
ask
same
that.
thing, it's just that final step of cutting the check to DIR
Doesn't happen.
doesn't happen because those costs are being incurred locally.
Okay.
Go ahead, keep going.
Do you want me to identify them now? Or
Sure, I mean, I think highlighting some of these comments would probably be good. Go ahead.
Okay, I won't go through all of them because there's a lot of repeats, but on page 9, section 1859, 71.4, the last section, C. It reads, any project awarded, so on and so on. And then you get to the end, and it says, for any project for which the school district is required under Labor Code 1771.75 to pay the Department of Industrial Relations fee to initiate and enforce access or labor compliance program. So it sounds like it's only paid when you have to pay DIR, or the grant is only given when you have to pay DIR. So I would ask to change that, and anything else
Okay.
that pretty much says the same thing.
Is subject to 1771.
Yeah, that would be better.
Okay, thank you. No problem.
Perfect. Any other questions? Bill? And then Fred?
It's more of a concern, but when it comes to the design, build process and costing more, with these economic times, and especially when you have small school districts, I think it's very important that we make this really well-known, because people that work in small school districts don't have the expertise that the larger ones do. And these are big decisions, and often you get districts making decisions, and superintendents often are working in these positions, or advisors, and they can look very foolish to a board when they choose a delivery method and they don't incorporate the thought process, after the fact that, well, why did you select this process when we had a higher cost? And it sounds like a small thing, but it gets big in these districts. And I think it's very important that if that's the case, that really has to be, brought out so that districts and people are aware of that.
Our department is undertaking a very active public outreach program. I have personally gone to several Office of Education meetings where there were various school districts present, and I've explained this to them. We're going to do a lot more outreach in the next, starting the middle of July and then going forward from there. And our intent is, with this program, to work very closely with the school districts to be able to help them through this process. We are implementing some changes for them. We're going to have an electronic certified payroll reporting service. It's no cost to the districts or the contractors. It was really pretty selfish on our part because we're looking at mountains of paper and we're trying to figure out how to deal with it. So we'll be helping school districts through that because they will have to be involved. And the fact is, school districts still have a responsibility to ensure that their projects are completed in compliance with law. So we need them to partner with us to make sure that this works as intended.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up, I mean, we always, generally, when the board adopts new regulations, we always go out to the COEs and do outreach ourselves. I'd like to, hopefully maybe we can partner up with DAR, so maybe we can both go together and do this kind of outreach to notify folks of the new regulations, not just from the OPSC and SAB perspective, but also from DIR. So
We'd be happy to do that.
And I think it would be very helpful. I mean, one of the things I've written down kind of as a to-do list is to take the questions asked here as a starting point for a Q&A. Because I think if we're asking these questions, other districts are going to have these questions, and starting a Q&A would be very helpful to outline some of those concerns. So, Bill, question good? Yes. Then we're going to go Fred, then Mamie, and then we're going to go Masha and back to Sean.
A couple things to clarify. So if there's an apportionment after the initial SAB apportionment for a DTSC cleanup or something, additional cost, so there's just an additional fee assigned at that point? Since there's more bond funds expended. And that may not involve a construction contract. It would just be further testing DTSC reports. How's that?
The fee excludes site acquisition costs.
But that's not a site acquisition.
It's on the 5004, the grant is provided as part of site acquisition.
But you don't have to be doing site, okay, so it's...
Yeah,
so,
falls inside.
So even under a addition on an existing site that's subject to DTSC, that's site acquisition.
Yes.
Okay.
That's our authority to provide it is under site acquisition, so when we calculate it, we would exclude that portion.
Now, for a similar case, a district has a hardship, maybe Calexico, goes ahead and does this, doesn't know about doesn't do this for whatever reason. They are now ineligible for state funding because they didn't comply with this. Is that? And is there an appeal process either through the Industrial Relations Board or through the SAB for these odd situations that will happen?
There's nothing in the statute, I don't know, first of all, so let me talk off the top of my head. There's nothing in the statute that says if it's not followed, the entire project becomes invalid. So I don't know. I would think that would be something that the district would work out with DIR, but we could come back and have a better answer for you.
Because it would be difficult for the district to certify that they're following all applicable laws if they can't, which means then you can't. So, yeah, that
Nancy?
might be something.
I'm not really sure I'm following all this, but
Well,
we're going to do compliance on the project when we're notified that the project is receiving construction bond funds or design build. I'm not sure if your question means will the school district's funding be affected?
Well, let me give you an
that
example.
I can't answer.
So Calexico, or some of it has the roof in imminent danger of collapse. They go out and do it, and for whatever reason didn't do this.
Didn't notify DIR.
DIR. They come in later for their modernization application, which consists of fixing the roof to reimburse themselves.
That, I don't know how you're going to treat
So
that.
there are those situations that may happen, and whether that's where a county office needs to,
Right.
in review of the contract, say, or reviewing the emergency situation, that
Right. The department is not going to be taking any action to stop a school district from getting funding. That's not our authority. That's something that OPSC will have to determine. Our job is to verify compliance on the Public Works project, that it was completed in compliance with state law. So as far as how the funding goes, that's not really a DIR issue.
In a case like that, would they still be if they did the work on an emergency basis, would they still be subject to these provisions too?
Yeah, we'd still have to go back and make sure that the workers were paid appropriately and all the records were,
So if there would still be some version of a monitoring. It would be, we're going to have to figure out a process in an emergency situation. I think in working earthquakes, as we had one last night, and we continue to kind of have them, we don't want to delay the process. So if we give them, as Fred rightly says, emergency funding, they've got to do, redo the facility fast. How do we then do a trigger to DIR, and how does that work with oversight? And if DIR isn't come down there to notify that the district still has to provide the records, DIR will still come down and verify that everything is followed. But I think it's a valid point, Fred, that we probably need to figure out a emergency policy process.
Then just one more question. The fee amount, does the law say, where does a 1.1 whatever percent, and then the other one is just borrowing off the established table?
The fee was established by the statute, yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have Mamie, Masha, Sean.
I just am looking for some very basic confirmation and clarification of basic issues. So the fee that will come to, okay, let me back up. The district will get LCP money as an award as part of our project. And computations, I'll find, will stipulate to that. So we get the dollars. We then send those dollars on to DIR. There is no match requirement. That is the total amount that's owed for that project to DIR.
The statute specifies that the SAB can increase the grant only for the state share. So we calculate the 100%, and then you split it state and district match, because that's the way the statute reads.
Okay. Oh, wait. Repeat that again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a local match. Yeah.
Okay. So then I don't just send on to DIR the state amount. I take that amount. Let's say it's $10,000, just pretend. Okay, so I get $10,000. Now, before I send a check to DIR, I got to put 10 to that and send it on. The match is based only on that. And now
If it's
match morphs into
50-50,
fee.
new construction 50-50, hypothetical, fee 10,000, or the state shares 10,000, yes, you're correct, local match would then be another 10,000, of which you would send 20,000 to DIR.
So that now that then becomes the fee that I owe DIR, but if my project is going to cost substantially more than the state allowance, I don't owe DIR money for that part.
No.
I only owe state plus match.
Only the bond funds. Let's exclude design build, but remember, bond funds. This is not project costs. It's bond funds received from the state is where the fee is determined.
So then when it comes down to my issuing the check to DIR, my authority letter, which will come from the language that's in my fund release document, it's going to say, okay, you get $10,000 based on the LCP fee calculation. And then it would probably need to have some language in there that the amount that I need to pay DIR is going to be that times 2.
Or 60-40, or 60-40, whatever
Yeah,
the match
whatever.
is.
Financial hardship,
Yeah.
depending
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the situation.
Okay, now, financial hardship. That leads right into the next question. If that's the case, then the advisory coming from the state for financial hardship is going to say, okay, I get 10,000 on the state, because that's how it was, that was where the formula for computation is, and you're also going to send me another 10 so that I can pay my 20 to DIR.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be no different than the total project cost, depending if there's any kind of cash contribution, for a financial hardship, you're going to get either
Okay, so
up to
you'll run
100%
the
or whatever.
formula.
Yes.
Okay. And then, two other somewhat related questions. 1D bonds don't play in this at all?
All bond funds.
All bond funds, okay.
All
Because it wasn't
bond
real
funds.
clear in all of the write-up and then referencing.
Any bond, any source.
Any
Okay.
state
Bond.
construction bonds,
Okay.
not local bonds.
Right.
But state, yeah.
So
Okay.
that would include bonds that haven't been passed yet as well. Any bond for the future. This is
Right.
just part
So,
of how we
assuming
operate
that
now.
we have AB 220, then this law will come to play and there's not any additional language in AB 220.
Never assume anything.
Correct. Yeah.
We don't anticipate that there'll be any additional.
When the governor signs it, we can look.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, once we get this down, it would be nice to know we've got it down. Okay.
Oh, but that wouldn't be government. Rob, you said just a quick clarification as
just
you're
on the-
jumping ahead of Masha.
I'm sorry, on the fee issue, and we don't have the statute in front of us, but everything that I've read to date says the DIR fee will be 1/4% of the state's funding, not the match. So, I mean, that's a huge difference, obviously. So somewhere we need to just clarify that, and I haven't seen this, I've not read the statute, so I apologize for that, but.
We'll take a look and clarify it next time, bring back.
Okay.
Okay, then we have Masha.
Okay, so mine are going to be even more basic than Mamie's, and I don't know if it's because the subject is complicated or the GSA just completely overtook my brain cells. So the old LCP grant that we were providing to 47 and 55 project is going away. The new one is taken over. We do still have an issue of the projects that are 47, 55 funded with some contracts awarded before and some after, so we'll be clarifying that.
That you would just continue with those. The new requirements don't go into effect until after August 1st. So
that may
if you,
help figure those out, okay. That may, okay, so I think we need to like spell that out for the school districts. Like maybe we can do like a scenario Q&A, if you have this scenario, this is what you do. If you have this scenario, this is what you do. Then the other thing, just a suggestion, I think we do need to define construction contract. I think, Nancy, what you mentioned in the past. Right. That it has to be a public works construction, because I think.
It's bond, yeah. It's attached to the money.
Well, no, I think when we're talking about the trigger of construction contract being awarded before August 1st or after August 1st, maybe a definition. But I don't know if it's getting us more into the weeds or not, but just to look at that as a suggestion. And
we can help you with that.
just to confirm.
DIR will help.
Okay, thank you. And then just to confirm that I understand, if I'm a school district, which I don't represent one yet, but if I were a school district and I had I'm subject to the new, I meet the requirements for the new program, but I have a waiver, I just retain the fee? I retain the amount that would otherwise represent the fee. So when I get the state, when I get the 5005, which represents my state share of the project, instead of writing out a check to DIR, I retain the fee. So if that's the case, I think we need to revise our questions on the 5004, because it's right now it currently states, are you required to pay a fee? Well, if I'm exempt because I have an approved LCP, I'm not going to mark that box, I'm not going to get the money, I'm going to shortchange myself. So I think we need to look at the questions in that way. Because up until I heard about the waiver, when I read it last night, I didn't raise a question. But now that there's a waiver process, so that's one suggestion. And the second question is there a easy process for a state agency like OPSC-SAB to go, let's say, on DR's website and see the list of districts that have the waivers?
Yes, we are. We actually just developed and put up on the internet our webpage that talks exclusively about this new unit, and it will also include, as we go forward, the list of projects that are subject to monitoring. There is currently a list of school districts that have approval to operate a labor compliance program, and we certainly can clarify on the listing those that are not subject to the fees.
Okay, then I would suggest that maybe internally for OPSC, we have some kind of process where, let's say, project manager verifies that information and marks it in the project file, because 5 years later, when audit rolls around, the DIR list on its website will be a current list. It may no longer show that, let's say that a district stops having its own labor compliance program and they think it's a better deal for them to go with the DIR one. We will lose that historic.
We can also
unless
work
you
with OPSC and provide a letter that verifies that the school district was granted a fee waiver based on their project. That's something we can do.
But I think if it's on your website, it's
Yeah.
an easy check, no paperwork for anybody. We just mark the file, and then for audit purposes, we know that.
And it currently is.
That's the reason the district did not reimburse DIR for the fees, because they had an approved waiver at the time. So just a suggestion. Okay, I'm not done yet, sorry. Also, the instructions to the 5004, I think we need to perhaps clarify that. And just because it wasn't crystal clear to me, again, for the reasons stated above, that the difference between the old fee and the new fees. So I'd clarify that and then the waiver.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll have Sean, Cesar, then Deborah. Oh, then Letty.
Mine's easy.
You
Will-
want to say that.
Will OPSC be asking for any information for applications filed that are already filed? Like if we had, when we filed in October, if we hadn't executed a contract, but maybe we have since then. I mean, are you guys going to update any of that to determine what applies?
We have to take a look at that. How we're going to handle the ones we have in-house, because we may not know. I mean, the 5004 may not show a contract date, but there may have been one signed after that. So we do have to take a look at those projects to see if we need to calculate the fee. So we may have to send the district some sort of a notification or a letter, or ask the district if you have, for the projects that are still on our workload, if you've issued a contract since you submitted.
Okay, that's it. Okay, Cesar?
Hi. Has the DR changed the way that they approve a school district's LCP, or has changed or in terms of reviewing if they're in good standing?
There were some changes to the regulations in January of 2009 that tightened up the requirements for it, and those are the regulations that we're following. There's some changes that were made as a result of SBX 2-9 for how future LCPs will be reviewed, but the regulations that have been in effect for over a year.
Has any of the school districts that had LCPs fallen off that list, or has there been issues with some in terms of quality?
We occasionally get complaints about how programs are being operated, including some from school districts, and we investigate those, and the director makes a determination. So far, no school district's authority to operate an LCP has been revoked by the director. Some private third-party programs have been.
Good. Okay, Deborah?
Just some clarification. When Mamie was talking earlier, I kind of got the idea that there was the fee would apply to the district share too, because she said, but in here it says that it's only on the state bond money. So why would a district be paying if they are putting it up, or if they have a local bond, not a state bond? Is that subject to this fee? Because I think I've heard it both ways, and I'm not sure.
There's two components. First, there's how do we calculate the fee, and the fee is calculated based on the bond proceeds. So it's a percentage of that. But then the question is, what new grants are then provided? So the grant is provided to cover the state share. So in other words, The 100% of the fee is a percentage of the bond proceeds, and then it gets split 50-50.
Hold on, because I actually have the language of the legislation in front of me, and it's final. So, of the bill, if you look it up on page 10, which falls under I don't know if you guys have it. I just happen to have printed it out and put it in. So under Section 5, Section 1771.3 was added to the Labor Code. Part A2 reads, the Director of Industrial Relations, with the approval of the Director of Finance, shall determine and assess a fee on any awarding body using funds derived from any bond issued by the state to the public works projects in an amount not to exceed 1/4 of 1% of the bond proceeds. The fee shall be set to cover the expenses of DIR for administering the prevailing wage requirements on public work projects using those bond funds. So the question then is the interpretation of this statute, where it does say the amount not to exceed 1/4 of 1% of the bond proceeds. So you could potentially, being an attorney, argue both ways.
I can only tell you how DIR is looking at it, and that is based on the bond funds. Now, I can't speak for OPSC. I don't know what their regulations are, but that's what DIR is expecting to receive, is 1/4 of 1% of the bond.
You are saying just on the bond money, but yet when Mamie was talking earlier, there was nodding of the heads that the district would have to kick in a share of that too, but that's not correct.
Not by me, because I don't know what.
Okay, hold on. No. Let's let OPSC, Juan's got his hand up.
This is a very important issue. We understand that. And I think that we do want to further clarify. Now, just so we all know, one of the challenges that we always have when awarding any grants is whether there's a local match requirement in terms of the state, the school facilities program. We understand what the statute says under the Labor Code, but we also have to go back to the Green Act and our ability to award a grant without a local match. So that's one of the things that I want to go back and further clarify, just so we're all clear. But that's kind of the things that we're looking at, is we award a grant and there's a local match requirement under our program. We understand what the Labor Compliance Labor Code says, so how do the two mesh together, something that we'll further clarify.
And so basically is what's going to happen, hold on, is this is a legal interpretation. Attorneys will probably have to get involved in this. And this is kind of when we talked about the high performance incentive grant, whether we can give the grant with a match or not, because it wasn't specifically spelled out. And then it goes into which statute supersedes, because, you know, you've got one over the other, and you're also bringing in Department of Industrial Relations. So that's something we actually need to figure out lickety-split, because August 1st, this goes into effect. And if, you know, it just has to be clarified for districts before then, because we need to know.
And just on that point, and I think Brian mentioned earlier too, but the August 1st date, we do have some provisions in statute that allow us to leave projects open, not full and final, and give them additional grants for LCP. So even if we don't have all of these regulations approved by OAL before August 1st, our regulations, we can take projects to the state allocation board and leave them open, not be subject to them full and final, and then increase the grants later. So there's no worry that projects will not be.
True, but it also creates a sticky point, because DIR will then, for money awarded on any state bond funds, will trigger the notification, which then will trigger, if they've received bond funds, them paying the fee. So yes, I get we keep it open, but it adds a whole other layer of confusion and not streamlining and consistency. You know, on the plain reading of this, it would seem that you only pay on a fee on the bond funds, but the big question is who supersedes what, especially with the bond covenants and bond money, and requiring a local match. Now, Cesar, do you have, you as the sponsoring agency
on this,
or a sponsoring entity?
We did provide that. I mean, not knowing, of course, the Green Act and the information that Juan just mentioned, the intent of this is to have the fee of up to 1/4%, not the 1/4% automatically, but to be, of course, determined by
Not to
DOF.
exceed.
Yeah, exactly, be determined by DIR and DOF. Now, we meant it so that it only comes from the state share. That was the buy-in that we had, and basically give DIR the resources that they need to actually go out and enforce these projects. But I understand what you're saying.
Is this intent, because what matters honestly as an attorney is what you look to is what's the intent of the legislation. Is there any intent that this is spelled out in any support or opposition letter or any communication, emails between you and DIR? Because if that, then that supersedes whatever the attorney may come is the intent of it, and so the intent interprets.
We can look at that. I don't know offhand, I don't remember if we got into the particular details with regards to school funding and the way that the LCPs were funded before and how they would change to this particular method. So I don't think so, but we can always go back and check to see if there was a letter by the author that was provided into the record.
Okay, because I mean, if DIR is only expecting state and we've got a confusion in intent, know that intent always rules with legislation, no matter what internal attorneys may decide. I can tell you that's what the courts look at. We got a little bit off that, so Deborah, are you? Okay, next is Letty, and then anybody else? And then Sean, and then, Letty, then Mamie, and then let's go public comment.
Okay, so, and just for feedback on your write-up, I read the whole thing and never saw match anywhere in it. So if it turns out there's a match, you got to go back to rewrite.
Okay.
And we're hoping there's not. My first question, I have two questions, is DIR going to continue then to address people's plans and approve local district plans as they do now? So if someone didn't have one now, but decided to submit one at this point, are they continuing to go through that process, or does everything shift to this unless you have prior approval?
We will continue to look at applications through August 1st. After that, we're looking at whether we have the authority to grant approvals after August 1st, because some of the language in the statute seems to imply that anything else goes away after August 1st. So we're still,
shift.
Yeah, but we're still accepting applications, and like I said, we have some pending now that we're looking at from school districts, actually. So,
okay, and since these are bond funds at DIR, will the personnel doing these checks be exclusive to only working on school projects?
they won't be exclusive to school projects. They will be exclusive to projects that are funded by the provisions of the statute. So it's not, it doesn't just affect schools. There's water districts, there's special districts that get funding.
Not in the funding source, and the funding source is pretty specific, and that's why there's a concern. We get audited all the time that we never, ever use state bond funds for other than the awarded project. I just wondering if that carries forward, because we have a requirement to be exclusive in how the funds are spent. Just wondering if, and that comes from a history of getting bottlenecked in agencies that don't honor that. So.
Well, the department is establishing a new unit that will be effective August 1st. Their exclusive responsibility is to verify compliance on public works projects that are funded by the amounts coming from the state construction bonds. And they do go beyond school districts. We have jurisdiction over every type of entity that's getting state construction bonds now and in the future, but plus design build projects.
I understand that, but this money does not have authorization to be spent other than the projects authorized by the money.
That's
so
correct.
That's where it needs to flow. So even though the worker may be authorized to do water bonds, this money is not authorized to do water bonds. So it bears looking at very carefully, because we wouldn't want you to get in that kind of trouble, but
Well, I think
The money-
where-
Very
I think
specific.
where Letty's getting to, kind of let me clarify a little, is so let's say we give you 10,000. It's almost like DIR needs to verify that 10,000 was spent on one person just for this, and that the money from our bond money that came to you was not used for travel for somebody else in covering their expenses in reviewing a Caltrans or a water project.
The funds go into a public works enforcement fund. All of the money goes into one fund, which is intended to be used for compliance monitoring on all projects for which the money has been deposited into that fund. So it's not going, we're not going to be able to say, the El Cajon School District gave us $10,000 and we only spent $10,000 on their project. Because what if their project costs us $75,000 to monitor? We're not going to keep those kind of records. It's an insurance model. Everybody pays into the fee, and the compliance monitoring gets done on all of the projects that are subject to the compliance and monitoring by the department. So you may be paying $5,000 for your fee, but it's costing us $100,000 to do it. It doesn't, in the long run, it all goes into the same
I
fund.
totally get. I think the one thing we're letting, we need to, and maybe ask your attorney, is are we running afoul of bond accountability? And I think that's just a question that needs to be clarified, because I understand the process of what DIR intends to do, and with this being an insurance model, but we need to make sure, because you are taking all bond funds, but they were separately voter approved, that we're just not running afoul within, just like a school district, we have several different funds that maybe within one giant fund, you have school construction fund, Caltrans fund, water, and you can account within that fund. And I don't know what the answer is, but it does need to be looked into, because all it takes is somebody to file a complaint and lawsuit, and then we got a lot of trouble on our hands.
Well, and I asked the question because if we were to do that model the way you described it, that would be deemed illegal by OPSC at our audit. So we're required to very specifically only use bond funds for the project specifically funded, even if we do aggregate any kind of aggregating within a fund. Those funds for that bond must go specifically to actions on that bond, and that's true with all our various bonds. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
We'll look at that, but I don't believe the intent of the law was for the department to do compliance only for the amount that's paid for the project.
I'm totally with the insurance model.
I
That's
believe
not
they
the
want us
problem.
to monitor the entire project, not
The
until we
problem
run out of
is-
money.
The problem is if you have employees working on other bonds, if you pull our insurance fund with other bonds, I think you may be in trouble with bond
Well,
requirements.
we'll look
So-
at it. I don't believe that was the
I think in
intent.
talking to Laura Chick or somebody else's, I mean, I don't expect you to have the answer. Actually, is what we're going to do is I'm going to hit Mamie, then we're going to take a 10-minute potty break, and then we're going to do public comment, because public's been sitting, and then we'll come back to the IMP members, if that's okay. And Cesar and Sean, I've got you down.
My comment is somewhat related to Letty's in terms of the fact that the legislation addresses that these bond funds would be used for LCP going to DIR, and that it's all bond funds, so water, schools, hospitals, veterans, whatever else happens to be out there to which it would apply. And going back to the whole match discussion, it would appear that if we end up having to do a match component, then what about these other entities and however their bonds are written?
And we'll determine that, but right now, let's take, what is it? I don't have my glasses on, I can't even see. Like 11:15, come back at 11:25, public comment, then start off with Cesar and Sean after.
Exactly.
Will you be required to submit Yeah, I understand, and that's okay, and that's why I don't want to bring it up from there, but somebody needs to agree with that. And I figured that was probably the first for a little step, and I knew you were rushing. No, and again, I figured somebody who at some point we need to get start going to see. Believe me, I know what it's like.
Thank you very much. Yes, no, I.
But I know a lot of our districts have questions, and I think today's discussion is really helpful. And you don't need to, right. Yeah, and really for us just to be more clear, who should we be contacting? What's available on the website, resources, just those things are just the opportunity to put faces to the names together. And there is now. So, but yeah, you let me know. I'll send you an email with our upcoming meeting dates. Yeah. Get those information.
You know, it's a little different. I understand, bear with me. Yeah, I don't know. Not a problem. No worries. Thank you.
Well, it'll be it's a good opportunity. We do get good participation. We have a lot of districts in Orange County that are very active in the building program, and so they will need to hear us and they will want to. So it's I can bring them together and have in a venue that we all have established as we're referring to. So Orange County did have a labor compliance program that we had previously approved when the new requirements came into play last year. We didn't qualify just by the nature of our staff that we were contracted out. And so a lot of districts were also using our program. And so there was a big shift and they were confused. Wait a minute, why didn't Orange County Department of Ed renew your LCP? And we said we didn't qualify, we didn't meet the experience requirements, and we weren't running it in-house. Yeah, would, yeah, we've done, the projects that we've done have been with another school district and they took the lead. Typically on those ones, so with the joint project, and we use the same LCD provider. So there's an economy of the scale and then just the other projects that we had in the pipeline as well from that district. We have a really small program as far as Orange County Department of Education. We do special education and alternative education programs. And so we are a school district in of ourselves. All our kids are referred from the 27 school districts in Orange County that have special, yeah, so so there's 27 school districts in Orange County, and most of them are participating in the program and doing some discussion, and so that's where we can be really helpful in working together and developing those relationships. And even just kind of because I know, I'm not sure where everyone's going to be located out there. I think initially getting started it would be really important to have meetings, and then maybe as a standing part of our agenda for future meetings, we can do, if they're not available, review that right now, look at different stages to see if we can project PTSD, examples of that. Currently, but in the past they have, so we're doing conferencing video stuff. Always at this starting point, just get people like coming to our meetings. They don't all run the same. I look forward to meeting with your sticker staff. I'll send you I understand you guys are
Yeah, for a while. We haven't had to admire
Orange County, that kind of thing, we can pull together a larger group for the initial outreach. Yeah. So, great. It was nice to meet
You're like up there sometimes, You're trying to like listen and answer. No, we're gonna continue this. We're gonna end on this, and I can't see why. But no, this is.
All right. Everyone, welcome back. Come on, we can finish in the next hour. Let's get out of here at 12:30. Richard? So, Richard, since you already pre-warned me that you have lots of questions and we are going to public comment, Richard, why don't you come up and start with those questions? And please, do not repeat what has already been asked, if at all possible.
I am going to avoid those,
Thanks, Richard.
but say thank you for reading that section of the code for us. Thank you. Richard Gonzalez and Associates. Regretfully, I do have many questions with regards to this proposal. The first one of which is the amount of the monies being given to DIR. Not because DIR is not collecting it or what the law says what they get. But we need to be careful about it from the OPSC SAB perspective because it talks about the amount of money from the state bond.
Okay, Richard, if you're going into that, it's been expressed and we are going to determine that by attorney, so you can say me too, that you believe it's only state bond funds.
I go beyond that.
Okay.
Okay, I don't disagree with her comment. Problem is, if you're a financial hardship or have received a loan, you received an apportionment from the state. The question is how do these fit into it? Because now you have, in the case of some of these projects, instead of, let's say, a $100 million project, instead of the DIR getting monies based on $50 million, which would have been the 50% share on a new construction, now they're getting the money on $100 million because it's the 100% apportionment for the financial hardship piece and or the loan. So that needs to be addressed.
Yes.
I have adding to that, projects are currently on the full and final list. They've received their apportionments prior to today. Yet they're going to have contracts that are going to be let after August 1st. And they may not have been 4755 projects, or they may have been. There needs to be a method to blend these in, either providing an additional apportionment to those districts which were not required to have an LCP, so they can get the 1/4 of 1% money, whatever proration value, if any. And number two, they paid someone to do, and are under contract for someone to do third-party compliance with Prop 4755 dollars, if they're not doing it internally, and yet they still have to pay DIR the 1/4 of 1%. How are you going to reconcile the two pieces? Because the district's under contractual obligations both ways. As far as the issue with regards to contracts, and I don't know if this is a repeat, I apologize if it is, Lisa. I think the law is clear that the amount that they get is based entirely on just the state apportionment, and it has nothing to do with the individual contracts. However, it's one of those cases where if you have one contract that is, then you pay them the full value of 1/4 of 1% of the state apportionment. I'm reading through all of my bulleted notes. Don't want to go to that one. Not at all. Not now. Not now. This one here has to do with our continuing discussions about the amount of information that's being put onto the OPSC 5004 form. We've now got contract date, notice to proceed date. Now we have award date. I mean, can we simplify that a little bit? Now, not only that a problem, what do you tell county office of educations who do not go to a school district board or to a board to award contracts?
Juan?
I'm sorry, simplify it how? Like eliminate one or what?
Eliminate 2 out of the 3.
Um,
My preference would be to eliminate the award date and the notice to proceed date and just go with the contract date, because that's the simplest, the most easily documented item you have, okay? But that may or may not run afoul to the language about the award date, okay?
Yes.
But can the board define, for purposes of the SFP, that the award date shall be defined as being the contract date? Of course, we have another agency to consider on whether or not that would be acceptable.
I think that would probably take a top to bottom review of the SFP to make sure that there weren't other regs or statutes that were in conflict potentially.
There was a reason, and Brian can explain, why the different dates are on the form.
When just our thought process when we first thought about implementing this, we thought, great, let's get rid of all the old 47 and 55 LCP and just have some nice cleaner 5004. But then we realized that we were going to have this transition period, and we couldn't get around a way of taking it all out. There's some nice suggestions, we take them, but so we felt like we had to leave both of them. The new LCP is based on the contract award date. That's what DIR is going to be using. So we were trying to align the triggers with DIR so that we would know, so the computer districts, everyone would know which laws they'll be subject to. If there's an easier way, that's fine. But that's what it reflects right now. We could maybe but the problem is that you have 2 different questions. Are you subject to this, to 7071, basically the old or the new? And if you're subject to the new, then we need the contract award date. If we combine the contract award date with the ink date, which is what it currently is, it's in different parts of the question.
So basically,
It's a formatting issue.
the answer is maybe review in 9 months, that we can simplify the form when we've phased out of the old. So, valid. Yep. Richard?
Well, as a rebuttal, the date of the ink date is specifically placed in there as an administrative means to ensure that the school district has in fact entered into contracts to deal with past material inaccuracy issues.
Fund release, 50%.
Correct. That wouldn't be an issue anymore if you're dealing with the contract award. If it's awarded, then it's awarded.
Can you elaborate on the material inaccuracy, why the contract's in there for material inaccuracies? This is when they submit the 5004. At that point, they don't have to enter into a contract. It's just that they have
It's the
included.
5005.
I understand, but the 5004 also has a place for the contract date and the notice to proceed date.
Well, here's the thing. I think there are some things that we could probably look at, but at right now, while there's doing the dual, I think we need to look at it maybe in a 6-month review. Or Richard, write down some of your suggestions to OPSC, and we can follow back up on this and ask for this at IMP.
Career Tech is another one of those little glitches we've got in there. The amount of the award for a Career Tech project is limited to the amount that was originally turned in and approved by CDE and subsequently turned into OPSC, specifically this 3rd round, if not impacting the others. And there's no provision in any of those to provide for labor compliance as directed through this program.
What do you mean? Because it's any bond proceeds. So when they get bond funding, even if it's only with their share of 1.5 million, they pay a fee to DIR on that 1.5 million.
You're correct. And the amount that the district gets, according to the current regulations, is only the amount that was approved through the state allocation board under the preliminary approval process, which does not include the 1/4 of 1% value.
No, on the preliminary apportionment it does, but all of these were left open to potential. It still can't, yeah.
The other is the equipment, which doesn't require enforcement.
Well, another glitch in regards to CTE that will have to be fixed at a future point, unfortunately. That's a statutory fix. No, that may be voted Vaughn to approve.
There are a lot of times when, to consider reimbursement projects in your regulations, Juan and Brian, and that is, there's a lot of districts that move their projects on ahead. Okay, and I'm glad you're going to have these workshops in advance to try and give some lead time to them. But they do most often move them ahead without necessarily thinking that they're ever going to come into the state. And then lo and behold, later on down the road, they find out they've come through the state, and now they're not in compliant, and they need to be made aware, well, what will be the impact to them, that they're no longer eligible. How will this be addressed, since they are all considered to be public works projects? I think you addressed the ones where the scope of the project exceeded the state apportionment, that it only be based on the...
Yes.
Okay. I will stop at this point, give other people a chance to speak.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Brian, go ahead.
About number 2, I was waiting until you were done. Number 2, projects on the full and final list. You talked about additional apportionments. So I just wasn't sure about the scenario that you were talking about, where they've received their full and final, but then they don't sign the contract date until maybe after August 1st. So they got the money, or they haven't gotten the money, but they've received the full and final. Now they have this additional fee. Okay, we'll go back and take a look at that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Public comment? Any other public comment? Come on up. You guys, this is your shot.
Oh, ouch. Hi, I'm Patty Herrera with the Coalition for Adequate School Housing. I really appreciate all the work that you guys have done on this. This is a really difficult subject. I know this because I've been following LCP for 8 years. I really just want to get some clarification really on how the OPSC grant amount will reflect the DIR fee. I know we've had a lot of discussion about that, but specifically I'm interested in the site acquisition exclusion from the OPSC calculation of the grant, as well as the equipment exclusion from the CTE grant. Because as I've heard the conversations, it appears that DIR is going to calculate their fee on 1/4% of the bond proceeds, which often include site acquisition or equipment if you're a CTE project. But as I read the OPSC proposed regulations, there are provisions to exclude both site acquisition as well as equipment. And so theoretically, match or no match, I'm not here to argue that, theoretically the LCP grant will not fully cover the state's share, if there is, of the DIR fee. So, and that's as I understood the conversation, Nancy, except for if you are calculating your fee on total project costs if it's a design build project, in which case site acquisition would be excluded from the DIR fee. But under all other DIR fee calculations, it's based on the bond proceeds and is blind to site acquisition or equipment.
As the site acquisition, I believe the statute, the DIR regs, and then our draft regs exclude site acquisition. It specifically calls that out. So the fee wouldn't be based on that.
And I think that's what I take issue with, Brian, and I really do appreciate. Oh, sorry. He took it from me. And that's what I take issue with, because I've read the law and I've read the DIR regulations, and I'm now reading the OPSC regulations. And the DIR regulations, and I think I've heard Nancy say this today, state that there's 2 ways that they're going to calculate a fee. And if you're a design build project, they're going to calculate a fee on total project cost less site acquisition. And that's clear in the regulations. The other way they're going to calculate a fee is on the bond funds released by the funding agency. 1% of the bond funds released by the funding agency. In our world, many of those released funds also include site acquisition or equipment if you're a CTE project. And DIR is blind to what portion of that is for, construction, soft costs, or site acquisition or equipment. And so if we are excluding site acquisition or equipment from the grant calculation, then we are underfunding the state's share of the DIR fee.
That's something we can work with DIR to make sure that that doesn't happen, but our intent was to line it up. So we'll go back and double check that we haven't missed anything. But when we came up with the wording, it was with discussions with Nancy and DIR to make sure that it was aligned. Okay. So we can go back and make sure we haven't missed anything. CTE, just so you know, there's a specific dollar for dollar.
And by the way,
grant
Nancy,
that can happen.
CTE is Career Technical Education.
You don't know all the acronyms that we do? And so some of those projects could be 100% equipment-based. So we were trying to, and that's on the forums and even in our system, that's captured which is which. So that we thought that's something that could be implemented fairly easily.
Okay. We'll
Okay.
clarify and come back. Anything else, Patty?
I actually, and I don't know the answer to this, but one of the things that I noticed in the regulations yesterday was that you tried to capture all of the programs outside of general fund programs like ERP and deferred maintenance. But one of the programs that I noticed weren't included in the regulations is ORG. And COS, but I think COS might be covered under 185971.4. I'm not sure. But if it isn't, then COS also needs to be addressed, and ORG needs to be addressed, because I didn't see those in the regs. But maybe I just didn't see something.
There's a lot of pages. It should be. I'll go back and make sure that ORG is in there. COS, because of the funding rounds, wouldn't be subject to these.
But they have final apportionments that they're still perfecting.
The
They got bond-
the
bond
final
monies.
apportionments have to be submitted as part of the regular 5004. And the change in the 5004 will reflect the LCP grants. So when they convert, they submit a 5004.
With 185971.4. I'm sorry, I'm a nerd, but
I'm sorry, a light bulb just went off. Tell me if I'm wrong, everyone please. COS and ORG for the final apportionment, the calculation follows a regular new construction calculation.
for COS, not ORG.
Not ORG?
Well, I don't think so.
Yes.
So we were trying to capture, we'll make sure that we capture it, but that was how we were trying to structure it. Thanks.
Okay. And then final comment, and I'm really sorry, and you know what I'll do is I'll shoot an email to you guys. I think that there are some technical issues with the regulations in terms of the citations in statute. And you continually refer to Labor Code Section 1771.75, but there's another important Labor Code section that authorizes DIR to pay the fee, and that's 1771.55. So, but I'll show you guys an email about that.
And as always, thank you, Patty, as I know you shoot your recommendations to make sure that OPSC has everything included. It's a team, so I think they would be happy to get your suggestions on this, because it's a lot of work in a short amount of time.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Kasha's doing a workshop on this at the end of the month. Just check out our website.
Oh, you should be fined. Go ahead.
Wael Elatar from San Bernardino State Unified School District. And I wanted to go back to the issue that Richard brought, and Brian asked the question in reference to the projects that have received apportionment already, but they didn't have the LCB component in them, and it's expected that they will be signing the agreements or the contracts after August 1st. And we have some of those. Okay, they've been approved in the last few months. And I think maybe the issue is, and I'm trying to come up with a suggestion here, is maybe instead of using the contract award date as a cutoff date for DIR, maybe the apportionment date should be August 1st and after, so we can avoid having this situation that I'm sure there will be other scenarios, not only this situation here, but there will be other scenarios where there will be some projects that caught up in the middle, where they have some work that's been done before, some work been done after. Some of them used LCB already or committed to LCB prior to the August 1st with a third party or internal. And also in this situation here where we have these projects that are going to be having this issue with August 1st date.
I think we all know that there's going to be some technical policy things we're going to have to figure out and transfer from the old to the new. And so this isn't just IMP members or those of you here, it's those of you watching on the webcast or who are going to watch it in the next week or so. It behooves all of us to give suggestions to OPSC and DIR of how potentially we're going to resolve this and work it out so that then we can create an FAQ and a process to clearly communicate with districts so they actually know how to do this, because I don't think we're going to find an answer today, but I think pointing out the issues and then looking for solutions, and I'm looking for everybody to provide recommendations as well.
Thank you, and I'm bringing this suggestion because the award date is really a date in the middle of the process, so there will be some projects that will be caught in this kind of situation because of the use of the award date. I mean, even OPSC does not use the award date when we apply for fund release. I mean, it has to be notice to proceed and things of that nature. So we're adding a date that we have not been using before as a cutoff date, and I'm suggesting a clean cutoff date would be an apportionment date. So
The problem, though, with apportionment date is the project could already be built, and it defeats the intent of the program to have them out there when the project is being built, rather than in this climate of funding right now. We don't know when we're getting bond funds, and so the intent was, if it all worked in a perfect world, you submitted, you got your money, and you were building your project. That's not happening right now. So I think the intent or the reasoning was contract award date was to trigger DIR being on site as you're building, understanding that DIR was not going to get paid until the apportionment.
That's exactly right. We need to be out there when workers start on the job site. So that's normally what triggers coverage for public works, is when the contract is let and the workers start on the project. So that is something, that's a date that we established, DIR established, and it's in our regulations now. So that doesn't mean that we can't go back and revisit it at some future date, but for the time being, since it took us a year to get to here, I think it's going to stay for a while.
Yeah, that's fine. Just be aware that these are the projects that are caught in the middle and they don't have LCB apportionments, and they will be subjected to the DIR requirements after August 1st. So that need to be addressed somehow, and some other suggestions should be.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Will. Lau?
Lyle Smoot, representing Los Angeles Unified School District, and I'm probably as confused as everybody else in the room right now, so I have a couple of questions and a suggestion, maybe two suggestions. The first suggestion is we need a matrix of projects and the funding sources for each project and how this all fits into it, and I think if we had such a thing, some of these questions might start looking clearer to us, like for instance a Prop 47 project or 55 that's subject to an LCP. Why would they even be
old matrix, new matrix?
Yeah, and why would they be subject to any fee if they already have what the state accepted as an LCP? And Cesar, I'll address this straight to you. I don't think you intended for that to happen, where you have a Prop 47 apportionment subject to an LCP, whether it's third party or otherwise, and now being thrown into this program because a little piece of the project got bid after August 1st. So I think if you had a matrix so everybody could see exactly what's going on, for each type of project and each funding source, and I realize that's a difficult process, but I think it's absolutely essential. I have a question. I heard Richard say that if you have, for instance, 1% of the project bid after August 1st, the entire apportionment is subject to a fee. And is that correct? So if you got a $10 million apportionment and a $100,000 piece of the project bid after August 1st, the entire thing gets a fee. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I'm following your example. You
Well-
have a contract for different phases, is that what you're saying?
Well, there's different phases, or
It's-
the
it's-
parking lot.
It's based off of the bond proceeds. Or the
Well,
bond
that's why I'm
relief, bond
asking the
money, yeah.
question, is because if you have the parking lot as the last project you bid and it's after August 1st, but that's $100,000 and it's a $20 million project, is the entire $20 million, or whatever the state apportionment amount, half of that, $10 million, the entire $10 million then subject to a fee?
I think it's if you receive the money prior to, no. It's when the funds are released, and this doesn't go into effect until August 1st. But if you get the funds afterward,
That's not what I heard.
It's
Lisa.
one of the things we have to figure out, Lyle.
No, I understand, and that's why I'm bringing it up,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I have a suggestion on how to resolve that.
go,
Please, by all means.
go.
And I don't know if this can be done, okay? I'm just sitting there, I haven't looked at the DIR regulations, quite frankly, and I don't know how much work is involved for the school district on their compliance with this thing, et cetera. But the state says you won't release the funds until 50% of the project is under contract. Why not just tie that same issue to the fee? And then you've resolved the issue that I just talked about. If 50% of the project is under contract before August 1st, you're on your way. If 50% of the project isn't under contract before August 1st, you're subject to the fee. There you go. I realize there are
looking
people that are
into.
going to go, what the hell are you talking about, Lyle? But, the other side of it is that's a simple way to do it.
What do the IMP members think?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, but it doesn't address bundling.
Yeah, I know it doesn't, yeah, but I think, because what we're going to have to do is, this actually is going to have to come back and take a look, because a lot of things are left open. We're going to come back to the IMP members, but anything else, Lyle?
Just one last comment. If DIR just agrees to accept as their fee the state apportionment, that issue is then resolved also. In other words, don't have a separate calculation by DIR. DIR and OPSC can talk however they want to decide how much the apportionment is. Whatever the apportionment is, that's the DIR fee. The issue is then resolved.
Okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
IMP members, and then, wait.
It's resolved for those that have to pay a fee to DIR, not for those that enforce their own.
Yes, yeah. Well, you can come on up, but we're going to discuss IMP questions first. IMP members? Rob?
So, and just this goes to Lyle's question. I thought what you suggested at the end was what I understood the program to be. In other words, when the fund release comes, the state's going to calculate what portion of that goes to the DIR. Because it's kind of an insurance model, to steal your description, it's going to underfund and overfund certain projects. And regardless of when your contracts were signed, it's just all based on the apportionment amount and then the fund release. That's how I thought I understood it.
We were, again, trying to align it with the triggers for the fee, and one of the triggers is when the contract award date. So, I mean, this is things that we'll be thinking about, but just to clarify, is there's the contract award date, and that's what triggers the fee. So we would be able to calculate it at the 5004 stage, because before the multiple, outside of the multiple contracts issue, when it comes in, the contract has either been signed before August 1st or hasn't been signed at all, in which case it'd be after August 1st. We would know what the fee would be, and then it's not due until the 5005. But we can calculate it at the 5004 for the purposes of apportionment. We have to go back and rethink that because of the multiple contracts, but that's the way we have it set up currently. So we calculate it at the 5004 for the apportionment for the funding shell that goes to the SAB to approve,
Right.
and then it's actually paid when the district actually receives the money.
Assuming the contracts that we certify to having signed with the 5005 were awarded post August 1st. I gotcha.
Which the 5004, where we were trying to capture whether that was going to occur or not with some of our questions. So, yeah.
Masha?
I concur that it'll all be worked out. If you look on the form, you would be asked about the award date, but and then once August 1st passes, then we assume that all, if you submit a 5004 past August 1st, and you have not awarded a contract, you leave that date blank, but since August 1st has passed, we assume that all projects from that point on, right? Do you see what I'm saying? You have on the draft form right now a question, and then you ask for the date. Well, if I'm submitting an app to OPSC, but I have not yet signed a contract, but August 1st already passed, that's a moot point.
Then it would, yeah.
So then,
But theoretically, you could have a high school project that you started 2 years ago that takes 3 years to build, and you haven't occupied yet, so I could still submit an 04, and that would not be subject to the new requirements.
but you would indicate that older date
On
on
the
the
04,
5004,
right.
so then your funding shell will not include that grant.
So the LA question is, what if I have 5 more contracts to sign to complete that project? And that's, I got you. Thank you. I'm there now. Thank you.
Well,
Well, I just want to go back to what Lyle suggested, and I disagree with it because it doesn't cover all scenarios. And I think the use of the award date is a retroactive on districts. And I give you an example that doesn't match Lyle's situation. If a school district have not 50% of the contract signed before August 1st, let's say 35%, and they committed the 35% for labor compliance, and then later on, after August 1st, they do the rest. This could be a double charge for the district. The objective, one of the objectives that we need to add, whatever the objectives are, is that the district should not be double charged because of this situation
so
here.
they started it and it was under 47 or 55, or they had their own third-party labor compliance. So I think that's an issue that the before and after transition.
And I go back again, I understand the reason for using the award date, but the award date really creates all these issues that we've been talking about, because you have some school districts that have all
Well, love suggestions. Love suggestions. If we're doing things unintentionally that are creating angst and hardship, and there may be another way, in this era, it's about suggestions of how do we make it work. Because I think whether certain things are in regulations worded, we can in policy define them to handle and clarify some things.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Thank you. Letty?
Hi, this one's for Nancy. Talk to me a little bit about how the monitoring works, because we're going to have issues come up with emergencies or these that you get that they're already partway or somewhat through a contract or even completely through a contract when the rest of the work is done. The optimum is that you would monitor during the contract, correct? Is there a validation process you can do with a contract that's already done? Because my understanding is the district still has a requirement to do certified payroll and all of that. So likely we would have complied with documentation that could be reviewed after the fact in those gap projects. But so I just wondered, how essential is there a modified process for if you got one after the fact?
It will be essentially the same, except that we'll be looking at the certified payroll reports after the work is finished to verify compliance. And so if we find a violation, there are statutes of limitations. We have 180 days and that can be extended and that kind of thing. So in those situations, we will be looking at certified payroll reports after the work is done, but it doesn't mean that we don't have jurisdiction to investigate and resolve any violations that might be detected.
Okay, so like for us, I know the 180 days kicks in from the point of notice of completion, and then there aren't any more lawsuits about that. Is that the same statute you're talking about, or?
Yeah, it's 180 days. It can be extended to 360 days, I believe it is. So it's possible, but the whole idea of this program is to be in early as possible and resolve any potential violations at the beginning in the situation where it's after the fact, we are required by statute to review the records within 30 days. So it should be resolved within a short time after that. So that's what
Right.
our intent is. And, this is a new project for DIR as well. We're going to be, it's not going to be perfect out of the box. We're going to have to be making some changes as we go along. But that's what our intent is to, if there is a problem, get it resolved as early as possible.
Right, and that works best for districts, too.
It's like having a newborn baby. There's going to be bumps and bruises and
Yeah,
sleepless
yeah.
nights, and
They don't
there's
walk-
going to
they
be a
don't
little
walk
bit of
right away.
and yeah.
I just think it's worth having the ability to say, in those unusual circumstances or in the cases where you get a project, a component of projects done when the other comes in while we're in this transition, we're not going to be in a perfect world, and they aren't going to be able to do all of it real time.
I
And
would
so
hope
there
that
just
we
kind of
keep a
needs
sense
to
of
be a little
flexibility.
grace. Yeah,
We have to.
yeah. So
Have to. There's no, there's a lot of what's happening is that, we don't know how many projects that we're going to have to be monitoring. So there's we're going to have to make adjustments as necessary. We recognize that.
Okay. Any other questions? Public comments? Come on up, Ron.
I just wanted, Ron Perkins, WLC Architect, I just wanted to stress how important it would be as a high priority to figure out how you can direct pay from OPSC over to DIR so that the district doesn't have to go through all those kind of things.
Ron, a little bit of a pipe dream right now, just to be honest. I'll say it.
it's good to have
Good thought. Great something to strive for. A little bit of a pipe dream right now. So I think in ending this meeting and next direction, I know I'm going to produce from this webcast a lot of the questions that the IMP members had. Where I do my IMP notes, I'm going to make it a little bit more of a Q&A. Work with OPSC and DIR so that we can fill it in. I know on DIR's website they do have an FAQ that's a little bit more higher, broad questions rather than the detailed questions. But if in the middle of the night you are dreaming or you have thoughts and other questions, please make sure, Brian O'Dell is going to be the main contact at OPSC. Don't be afraid to send them to me or Nancy. Or yes, Nancy?
Right. We have a mailbox set up specifically for this program. It's
perfect.
cmu@dir.ca.gov, and we will.
C is in cat, M is in Mary, U is in Unity.
Unity. I like that.
Unity. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And you can submit questions there, and we will be responding.
dir.ca.gov.
Right.
But I think probably we'll come back next time. I was hoping that we could potentially adopt these regs, but I think we're going to need one more IMP meeting to clarify process and procedures. So for September, August. I'm trying to skip a month. Hey, why not? So we'll probably have this, and then as you know, on the pending list, CCI and a couple other things that is gonna come up. But please, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the collaboration. OPSC, DAR. Yes, Ron.
Next meeting, did we move to the second Thursday?
Yes, we're August 12th.
Then on, or is it for that?
Let's discuss it. I think we like potentially the second Thursday. I mean, I think it works better for us. So we'll post the dates, but let's plan second Thursday of the month to kind of continue doing this, and send in your suggestions if you got them for this program. But thank you, everybody. Have if you're off the rest of the Thursday, wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in a month.
Do you have your